So, the obvious question still ask myself, how did I end up in Liberia? Well, it all came down to an email. I got an email one Thursday morning in November last year, and it was asking for, I won't bore you the details, but it was asking for a nurse or a research coordinator who would like to go out to West Africa for 6 weeks to help set up a clinical trial in this area. So that's my background, a nurse, clinical trials. I had a cup of coffee and I thought, well, that looks interesting. So what I did was I forwarded it to the two most important people in my, two most important women in my life. So it's the wife and the boss at work. It's easy to tell which one it is. That would have been awkward if I had been the boss. Yeah, so I asked them, and I sent them the email. I was just looking through the trail for this when I was preparing the talk. I sent them an email at 8:45 on the Thursday morning, and both of them had replied by 1 minute past 9. They both had replied and said, "Crack on you go." So there was neither. Yeah, well, you did, yeah. A bit of poetic license. So they did say, "Go on ahead if you want to." So I was really supported to go, and I work in a fairly senior position at work. So it was a big ask for the university to allow me to go. I hadn't really had time to think about it. So that was 1 minute past 9. I filled in I sent my CV. Here's my CV to the lady that was asking, and by 9:30 she said, "That's great, Steve. Would you be free to leave next week until the 9th of January?" I wasn't expecting, I have to admit, to go so quickly to Liberia, but I thought, well, I've said I'm going, so I couldn't really pull out by then. And I had no prior experience of dealing with Ebola. I have to mention. So the following day, big day for me. I was getting my PhD. That's why I'm a doctor, but it's a PhD rather than a medical certificate. And I don't know why I'm looking so happy there, because this is before Outbreak. So I lost most of that Friday at graduation. And the Thursday evening before, I was down at Boots in the town centre getting injections for different diseases that I was trying to avoid in Africa. Not least of all, there wasn't a vaccine, as you know, for Ebola or anything, so I was stuck with that. So the following day went along, and then by the Monday, my work had agreed a secondment with Oxford University for 12 weeks. And I went down to Oxford University to the Nuffield Department of Medicine. They did deal in tropical disease research, and they have a very big setup there. And they had answered a call from the WHO to come up with delivery of clinical trials in that area. And they were putting a team together, like the A-team, but just not as good. So that, and I went along. And we were working with Médecins Sans Frontières, who are the Doctors Without Borders. So they're a voluntary service group who deal with emergency crises around the world. And they're at most of these sort of hotspots of where things are kicking off. So I had a couple of days training in Oxford, and then I went over to Amsterdam. I'll touch on Amsterdam in a moment. And then by the Friday I was in Monrovia. So it all happened very quick. I have to point out, I'm not one of these guys who's gone backpacking around Cambodia or anything like that. I've worked since I was 17 as a nurse, and the furthest I'd ever been before this was to Cyprus, which was far too hot, I have to say. I didn't realise it was actually quite mild there until I got to Africa. So it was a surprise to me to be scooting off on this little trip with my backpack. But I went over to Amsterdam, and Médecins Sans Frontières had by this time a few months' experience of managing these treatment units in West Africa, and they had a mock set up in a big industrial warehouse, really, on the outskirts of Amsterdam. And they would give me training, or give the team of us training on what to expect when we're out there, and also how to use the protective gear. And I'm going to touch a little bit more on the protective gear in a moment or two, but we pretended that this was a triage area, or this was a treatment area, and we had, over here, if you can't see it, but there was an ambulance that was set up, and we would practice taking people out of ambulances and contaminated ourselves and contaminated the environment, so we had a lot of opportunities to make mistakes, and then those were pointed out to us until we got things right. So we had a couple of days playing around there, which was actually quite nice because it was really cold in November in Amsterdam, and putting on these little suits was quite a pleasant experience because it warmed you up nicely. It wasn't like that when we got to 35 degrees in Africa. So there we go.